nya nya nya. Ba, ba, Babue, Zimbabwe. The broken Bunsen burner burns so bright.
Jamie.
Southeast Asian Peninsula.
Hey, Jamie?
Yes?
I think the only line we need from you today is drivers who switch to progressive could save big.
Cool. I just gotta finish my warm-ups. Foul, throw in the towel. History.
Switch to Progressive today.
Santa ski slalom in a salmon skin suit.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Inside Line Formula One podcast. Guys, what a race the Spanish Grand Prix was. Absolutely phenomenal. Kunal.
Yes, the Spanish Grand Prix was actually un-2017-like because all the while we were waiting for 2017, we were worried that this season could bore us. And guess what? The Spanish Grand Prix did exactly the opposite.
And Kunal, finally, after 5 long races, we saw an overtake for the lead. And not just once, but we saw that twice. Wow.
The Spanish Grand Prix is by far my most favorite Grand Prix of this season. And I still can't get over the Vettel-Bottas overtake. And Vettel threw him such a dummy. In fact, a double dummy is what we call it. And I honestly can't remember when we last saw a Ferrari overtake a Mercedes this convincingly in this hybrid era of Formula One.
And then it got even better because we had Hamilton versus Vettel. And that's what Lewis Hamilton wanted. That's what all of us wanted. And that's what we got.
So the score actually is Hamilton 1, Vettel 0. That's the overtaking score that I'm talking about because believe it or not, every driver keeps one. And I'm sure Vettel will be itching to get even.
Can't wait. So guys, in this week's episode, we have some really exciting stuff lined up for y'all. So we're going to do a quick recap of the phenomenal Spanish Grand Prix. And Kunal, the more I'm talking about it, I'm realizing it was so bloody awesome.
We also talk about Formula One's learning curve from MotoGP and wonder if the new Formula One without Ecclestone is more friendly, social and open.
And of course, we're going to try and read Bernie Ecclestone's mind. As all these rumors of him buying or helping Brabham buy Force India. And these are some crazy rumors during the rounds of the paddock.
So, time to get back to the Spanish Grand Prix for now.
Yeah, so we have some really interesting things to talk about. And interestingly, so we know Lewis Hamilton has spoken of consistency through the season, more than just winning races. And that's something we saw in Spain.
And it actually makes sense because Ferrari and Mercedes are so close to one another that the tiniest of mistakes will have the biggest of implications. And we've actually been seeing that in the last 5 races. And Ferrari's Achilles heel, as we'd call it, has been the safety car, whether it's a virtual or the real one. And 2 times out of 5 races, they have been impacted very badly. In fact, in Spain, let's remember, it was actually Sebastian Vettel's race to win. He had a super start. He had a super duper overtake on Valtteri Bottas. Then he defended brilliantly well against Hamilton coming outside of the pits. And he did all of that for just 2nd place.
Ouch. And yes, like Toto Wolff said, Lewis Hamilton's strategy was like magic. Hamilton drove like a man possessed. Kunal, I can't remember the last time I saw Lewis Hamilton drive like that.
Indeed,
right? He was so tuned into the race. He kept asking, for Vettel's timings, the gap, all of that. It was an absolute spectacle. I'm so happy we got to watch this.
And like I said, by far the best race of 2017. And how often have we had the 2 most iconic teams in Formula One? Yes, you can argue whether Mercedes is still as iconic as Ferrari, but irrespective, 2 very iconic teams and their 2 very iconic drivers. They fought on track while the team fought off the pit wall. And this is just the kind of stuff Formula One races should be about.
So while we're excited about the outcome, Lewis Hamilton thinks that Vettel was angry about losing the race. Now, I'm not sure angry is quite the right word, but obviously Sebastian Vettel is going to be disappointed and he's going to come back really, really strong in Monaco.
Yes, I'm sure he'd be disappointed. And the big question that I have even now, 2 days after the race, is could Sebastian Vettel have pitted in the last 12-15 laps? Should Ferrari have called him in? given him a fresh set of soft tires and asked him to do qualifying laps and chase down Lewis Hamilton. The big question which has already gone unanswered. And frankly, the reason why I wish they'd have tried it is because one wrong thing about Ferrari's strategy was that they spent a lot of Vettel's race time on the slowest tire allocated for that particular weekend.
Given how exciting the race already was, I don't think we would have survived that level of excitement if Vettel had actually been hunting down Lewis. But anyway, it just seems a bit unfair that a virtual safety car could wipe out nearly that 8-second gap that Sebastian Vettel had. Kunal, isn't there a better way to handle it?
That's actually an interesting point because just those couple of laps because of Van Doorn being thrown out of the track by Felipe Massa, of course Van Doorn's fault, I don't know if the FIA should try and innovate in this particular area and improvise, because instead of a virtual safety car around the entire circuit, could we actually have or apply the virtual safety car only to that particular sector? And we will actually end up relying on luck far lesser.
That's a really interesting point. Back to Vettel and Ferrari, and I know Valtteri Bottas was running the old spec Mercedes engine, but interesting to think about whether if Ferrari had pressurized Hamilton just a little bit more, could Mercedes have had engine woes? Who knows?
That's interesting. I'm sure Mercedes thought about it at some point, but we'll never actually know why they didn't take this chance and, chase down Lewis Hamilton. But it's also good to see that, Ferrari and Mercedes are probably compromising reliability on pace, because we know that Vettel had engine issues in FP3 and Bottas, of course, had his engine issue in the race.
Mercedes and Hamilton, for sure, they're pushing it far further. Lewis Hamilton has stopped carrying his drinks bottle on board in his car to reduce weight. That's just insane. That's crazy. I don't know what to say.
I'll be curious to know if he does that even for Singapore. Frankly, I don't think there's any chance he can do that, but why not?
Kunal, we have to talk about the first corner sandwich, Verstappen-Raikkonen-Bottas. Do you think anyone was to blame in there?
Well, I'm glad nobody was blamed there because it was actually a racing incident. But I'm also not glad that no one was penalized, because it's at some point when you look back at the replays and the driver on boards, I wonder if the FIA should have actually penalized Verstappen and Raikkonen for dangerous re-entry or rejoining of the racetrack. Because, basis that footage that I've seen, they came straight into Massa's way, who had to swerve, and then he ended up putting Alonso on the grass.
I think Magnussen was also impacted.
Yeah, Magnussen was impacted, and I know it was all too quick and probably all in the momentum, but whatever it was unsafe. And I hope the FIA comes out with some sort of clarification on this, because it was, had somebody crashed into the rear of of the Ferrari or the Red Bull, we don't know what could have happened there.
I think the FIA also needs to clarify on the entire driver identification stickers, please.
Yes.
So they've issued a suspended sentence towards Force India, and that's because Force India's driver stickers were not too visible from the stands, whatever that means.
I wonder if the FIA actually sat there in the stands and waited for those pink cars, and said, oh, I can't see the stickers on that car. But the FIA surely should have kept commercial contracts in mind while issuing this particular diktat, because the teams already have sponsors contracted for those particular places. So it'll be interesting to see how they come up with a solution to this.
And as we know, Force India's cars are full of sponsor stickers. And rightfully so, they're on a roll. But that just puts them in a quandary, because where do they now apply these forced upon stickers?
I think we're going to just let the commercial team at Force India, led by Stephen Kerno, figure that out. My ex-colleagues out there. And I'm sure the engineering team has surely figured their car out, because 4th and 5th place, mind-blowing stuff.
Brilliant, guys. Congratulations. So happy. And it makes sense that Force India is against Mercedes helping Honda with their engines. I think that is absolutely fair.
Oh, yes, and that actually depends how one sees it. So if you see it as Force India, which you are, I think it's of course unfair to the team, because did anyone turn around and offer Force India help when they were backmarkers in Formula 1? And I'm talking of 8-9 years back. And the answer is a clear no. So they worked extremely hard by themselves, climbed up the ranks again by themselves. And that's how it should be for Honda as well.
And just dwelling a little on Force India, so Kunal, they're twice the number of points ahead of Toro Rosso in 5th place. And they're now hoping to chase down Red Bull Racing. That is brilliant.
And going back to what Hamilton said about consistency, so Force India has finished both their cars in the points in all the 5 races this season. In fact, they've been the only team to have done that. And frankly, this whole talk about chasing Red Bull Racing is great PR story for Formula One, but it is also highly ambitious.
Daniel Ricciardo had his first podium of the season in Spain. I'm sure he's going to be very, very happy about that. But the slightly concerning part is he was 78 seconds off the lead car. 78 seconds.
Yeah, he also behaved himself on the podium, and Pedro Della Rosa was actually smart. He told him, Mr. Ricciardo, no shoey for me, keep it off. But
or keep it on with the shoe, I mean.
And talking of the 78 seconds, Christian Horner has said that Red Bull Racing gained 0.4 a lap in Spain thanks to their upgrades. I don't know how slow is that still.
Kunal, this basically means that if Red Bull Racing's upgrades had not worked, they would have been lapped by the Mercedes and the Ferrari. Because we know Hamilton and Vettel had already lapped everyone up to 4th place anyway.
Oops.
That would have been a big oops for Red Bull Racing. But a 78-second gap also means that Red Bull Racing can no longer only blame the Renault engines. Basically, they've got a lot of work to do on their car.
Yes, and strangely enough, the Aero era that we are currently in was seen to be favouring Red Bull Racing to making a comeback. But on the point of upgrades, and despite all those interesting complex upgrades that both Mercedes and Ferrari brought to Spain, the cars were actually evenly matched.
Thank God.
Yeah, and there's this whole news about a mysterious dial on the Ferrari steering that actually helps the drivers adjust settings to enhance tyre life.
And Mercedes have started hiding their actual steering wheels. So when they come in for scrutineering, they use a dummy steering wheel. It's just so much secrecy in Formula One. I'm just remembering Sebastian Vettel trying to peer into Lewis Hamilton's car at Park Ferme. But despite that, Ferrari have managed to copy Mercedes' clutch paddle design. And that's what's supposedly helping the drivers at the start.
Yes, that's actually interesting because Formula One is always about copying. If your rivals have it and it's working, just shamelessly copy everything you get. Just make sure you do not ask for the actual designs because that's what gets you a penalty if McLaren remember. But moving on, Nico Hülkenberg 6th place in the Renault, best of the season for him and for Renault. But Renault will be a little concerned that they were 23 seconds off Force India's race pace.
And Pascal Wehrlein, great news for him. So he scored Sauber's first point since a long time. And his feat is actually quite remarkable for 2 reasons. Firstly, he attempted a really brave and really awesome one-stopper and he made it work. And secondly, Pascal Wehrlein beat several cars with the latest 2017 engine while racing a car with a 2016 engine.
And the most interesting part about Pascal Wehrlein's team is that the person who put him on that one-stopper strategy is actually a female Formula One engineer, and that's so heartening to know. And it's also important to remember that this year's Haas, which eventually finished 10th, 3 places behind Pascal Wehrlein in Spain, is actually using the 2017 Ferrari engine, the engine that Sauber actually could not afford.
Wow. So Pascal Wehrlein scoring points means that of the 10 teams on the grid, McLaren is the only team to yet score points.
Oops.
Big oops.
For all the legendary status and the PR stories. But Alonso finished his race, so that's important. And Stoffel Vandoorne had his first ever overtake in Formula One. He overtook, guess who? Jolyon Palmer. And somebody I feel should anyway be replaced at Renault already.
I suspect Fernando Alonso decided not to opt for voluntary retirement only because he was racing in front of his home crowd. But anyway, now all eyes on Fernando at Indy 500 while McLaren will go racing in Monaco. In fact, Kunal, they will be on the back foot in Monaco because we know Stoffel Vandoorne has a 3-place grid penalty. There is no Fernando Alonso. And Button is back, which is great, but he's attempting Monaco without any testing. So we'll see how that goes.
Yes, and
We'll have some good racing or some good jokes. Works for us.
And Button, in fact, has said that he might just be back to racing full-time in Formula One in 2018 because he has a valid contract with McLaren.
Wow. So triathlon's loss will be Formula One's gain.
The other business that's actually out of business has McLarenBrokenDown.com. So the site shut down, and I think they couldn't afford
The site broke down.
I think they couldn't afford the frequent upgrades given how often the McLaren cars broke down.
Kunal, I can't believe you went to that website to check if it's yet there. But the Lance Stroll website is still alive and kicking. I just checked that one.
So on to other news. Hamilton has been rated as Britain's wealthiest superstar. But guess what? He's also blamed the sport for ruining his life. He said he could not socialize, he didn't end up meeting friends and whatever else. But Lewis, just be thankful for a change. Why can't you? Just be positive about this.
This just sounds very ominous, like, he's going to pull a Nico Rosberg on us and leave the sport that ruined his life. But Hamilton huffing and puffing and panting on the radio in Spain has made everyone wonder, is Lewis Hamilton lacking on fitness?
He's actually an easy target because firstly, he's been partying all along and he's very bold about it, and why not? And secondly, he's chosen to train all by himself this year. So I'm curious to see if it is actually fitness or that missing water bottle on his car that hampered Lewis Hamilton and made him puff and pant.
Interesting. Lewis Hamilton revealed that he was ambushed in London while he was jogging on the straights, and he was ambushed by none other than Nico Rosberg.
I just hope that Lewis wasn't running slowly in front of Nico trying to hold him up. But that's also what I believe Rosberg is up to these days to remain in the news. Is he really trying to stalk Lewis Hamilton? I don't know.
I'm wondering if there's a chance of Nico Rosberg making a comeback in 2018, given how he can't seem to get away from the sport.
And the sport can't seem to get away from him. So 2 out of 5 times, or 2 out of the first 5 races, teams have actually called and gone on the radio and said Nico. But on that note, I don't think we are even ready to talk about 2018 yet, because it's actually a Pandora's box.
Come on, we have to talk about 2018. I'm going to go out there, Kunal. So Vettel to Mercedes is what Eddie Jordan said, only to be said that, he's bullshitting by none other than Niki Lauda.
Here's the strange thing. 2 of the most respected figures in the paddock who say it like it is. And especially Eddie Jordan, who knows things much before they actually happen. I don't know if he's Nostradamus for Formula One. But it's great if a Vettel Mercedes talk is already happening. It's probably a little dated, I would assume, because Ferrari suddenly picked up pace. But the other driver who said he wouldn't rule out a return to Ferrari was Fernando Alonso. And all this while, Wolff has said that he could also consider Alonso for Mercedes for 2018.
That Toro Wolff, he is playing with us, Kunal. I'm telling you, he knows he can play with us, and he is.
In fact, Fernando Alonso said that he's willing to talk to anyone for 2018 unless Honda deliver a car he can actually win races in.
After his stupendous qualifying performance in Spain, I'm wondering if tennis will be a regular occurrence in Fernando Alonso's fitness regime.
That too during the FP sessions. And frankly, that P7 was completely out of nowhere. But the one good thing it did was it spoke volumes about McLaren's chassis. So one that Alonso himself is rated as the 3rd best in the sport. Okay, possibly the 3rd best in the sport.
But unfortunately, in all this talk about 2018, sadly, no one is talking about Kimi Raikkonen.
Or for that matter, Valtteri Bottas. And I think the Finns might be a little less wanted as the season progresses.
And Max Verstappen, who we know is most wanted. So Marco has said that he won't let Verstappen go to Ferrari.
And all of this while Jos Verstappen, the senior Verstappen, is possibly getting a Red Bull talent scouting role. So basically, Max has set up his and his dad's career in the Red Bull racing camp. I'm
just watching, though, whether Daniel Ricciardo could find a place at Ferrari. Yeah, that could be really interesting.
That would be awesome.
If Kimi Raikkonen doesn't get a contract in 2018, which could unfortunately be likely, Kunal, he could well turn radio jockey for Formula One. Or maybe become a regular feature on our podcast.
Yeah, he anyways loves his karaoke or karaoke, whatever you call it in your part of the world.
Yes, because drivers were following his lead in Spain and how. So Kivat, Sainz, Hamilton and even Magnussen, they all asked their teams to leave them alone and, less talk, more drive. So much fun.
But I can tell you that if Kimi Raikkonen retires, we won't be seeing much of him in the paddock.
Speaking of retired drivers, Nico Rosberg again. We can't seem to stop talking about him.
Yeah, we clearly can't speak about Jenson Button because he hasn't retired.
Yes, so Nico Rosberg wants to come to India and he wants to do yoga. So Nico, we practice yoga every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 in the morning. And you are most welcome to join us. And if you do come, please stay back for our podcast recording on every Monday.
This would actually be his second appearance on our show then.
Of course.
He was the first and he probably won't be the last as well. But moving on, Formula One is finally learning from MotoGP. So they used a new driver interview format post-qualifying. And I think that was a fantastic change. It was good to see the top three drivers come out on the main straight, with a journalist, Will Buxton in Spain, interview the drivers in front of the fans.
Yes.
And Ross Brawn has actually said that he is eager to speak to Dorna, the guys who run MotoGP, the guys who have the rights to MotoGP, and see if there are learnings that can be exchanged. But more crucially, see if there could be lesser clashes on the calendar in the coming seasons. And basis my maths, there will be 8 races on this year's calendar that will actually have a clash. So that means that there could be a split in the motorsport viewership around the world.
That's a very interesting approach. During Bernie's time, I'm sure he worked as hard as possible to ensure all the clashes that he could.
I don't know if it was about him losing his top drivers to rival series and if that was the reason. And maybe he didn't want anyone to watch any other racing series ever. That could also be a reason. But we'll never know what went into that octogenarian's mind ever.
Much like we don't know now. So there are these crazy reports of Bernie buying Force India or him helping Brabham buy Force India. I know we spoke about it last season, but I cannot wrap my head around that.
So it sounds a little silly, but does this give some sort of a hint about the future, especially when it comes to equal payments to teams? Now, I don't know if an equal payment is possible, but are there more favorable payment terms coming up ahead in the seasons to come for the midfield teams? Otherwise, it doesn't make sense because I can't remember last when Force India would have made a profit.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. And finally, guys, this week's episode cannot conclude without talking about the most famous Formula One fan this week. We're talking about Thomas, the cute little kid, who is also a big Kimi Raikkonen fan.
Yes, he is a big Kimi Raikkonen fan, just like you.
Yay.
And yes, I saw you crying when Raikkonen crashed out.
Unfortunately, there were no TV cameras to pan on to me.
But is this the new Formula One that we are seeing? Or probably this is the new Formula One that we just saw. Fan-friendly, open, social, and I really doubt if Ecclestone would have ever permitted this. He would have loved that iron curtain between the paddock and the pit lane and the grandstand.
I think we'll be seeing a lot of crying babies in the next race. A lot of parents will be like standing behind and poking their kids saying, cry, come on, cry, cameras are on you.
And so a few teams would surely be envying this lad because he got more coverage than they did on race day. And ladies and gentlemen, as we look forward to the 2017 Monaco Grand Prix, we are also as excited about Fernando Alonso's debut at the Indianapolis 500. We will be back next week with as many news, as many stories, and as many jokes on the Inside Line Formula One podcast. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes and on Audio Boom for your weekly dose of Formula One humor. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
If you look around, you'll see the world can be pretty smart. Okay, very smart. At Capella University, we think education should be smart too. That's why we're reshaping online learning with our FlexPath format. You can set your own deadlines, take classes at your own pace, even leverage your previous experience to move faster. So when it comes to earning your bachelor's degree, you know what kind of choice to make. A smart one. Visit capella.edu to learn more. Capella University. Don't just learn, learn smarter.